Alright, in this video, we are going to revisit this little list that we had made. If you remember that we had spoken about this all the way in the beginning, we had spoken about being able to create a control rig, and then we spoke about influencing the geometry. And that is what we are going to be working on next. Alright, so right now we have a control rig which is absolutely ready to go. However, none of this really controls the geometry, and that's my problem. So that is what I'm going to be working on. So let's see what the way around it is. So firstly, let's go ahead and unlock our geometry so we can actually select our geometry. I'm also going to go ahead and click on show and say none. Just make sure that your NURB surfaces, polygons, and joints are switched on. I don't want to see anything else, because really all that's going to happen here is that the joints that we select are going to be, certain joints are going to be controlling certain pieces of geometry. There's no point in sort of viewing anything else, controllers, IK handles. We don't want to see them right now. Okay, so you'll see that the process becomes incredibly simple. What I want is, when this joint moves, I pretty much want for that joint to control this geometry. So very simply, select the joint, then the geometry, and install a parent constraint. Okay, and you'll see that I have, as I go up, I want that particular joint to control this particular piece of geometry, G to repeat the last command, which is parent constraint. Parent constraint, my chest joint will be controlling this area right here. Next, going to be controlling this piece. And now all these guys right here, these are a bunch of pieces of geometry. That's 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, so many of these. I'm just going to select all of these. You see I'm selecting all of these right here inside the geo group. Let me group them together, and they still stay, this entire group is still staying inside the geo group, and let me call this head geo group, and all of this head geo group can then be parent constrained to that particular joint. There you go. Let's move on down here as well. So my thigh joint is going to be controlling this piece, knee joint controls that piece. My knee joint is also going to be controlling this guy. Ankle controls the ankle, ball controls the ball. Let's repeat the same thing over here. Thigh controls the big portion of the thigh. Knee is going to be controlling that little knee joint ball. Knee will also control the calf, or whatever this part is, the lower leg. Ankle controls ankle, ball controls ball. Okay, now let's do the arms. Okay, your clavicle is pretty much going to be controlling nothing at this point, because really the way I'm seeing this is, when your shoulder rotates, this ball is going to be rotating with it as well. So this ball is going to be controlled by the shoulder. Now you have to ask yourself, there are multiple shoulders over there. There's an FK shoulder, there's an IK shoulder, and there is a main shoulder. Which one amongst this am I exactly working on? Let me quickly bring up this little picture which I've shown you guys before. Remember, your FK joints, IK joints are controlling your main joints, and your main joint chain is pretty much controlling the geometry. So what I'm going to do is select the main joint. There it is. That's your main joint chain. So your shoulder will control this little ball. Shoulder also controls the bicep and the tricep, or the upper arm, if you will. Elbow controls this little ball right here. Elbow is also going to be controlling the forearm, if you will. Wrist is going to be controlling this little dude right here, G. Okay, and the rest of it are the fingers, and we'll do the fingers in a bit, but first let's do this side as well. So here's my main joint chain. Shoulder is going to be controlling this guy. shoulder. Elbow controls this little ball. Elbow controls this stock. And the wrist is going to be controlling this little ball that is sitting right over here. Okay, let's do fingers real quick. And this is going to be extensive, intense, and yet easy. This is my palm. Index, index 1, index 2, index 2, index 3, index 3. Mid, mid. Pressing G really comes in handy because I don't have to constantly reach out to the menu. There you go. Let's do the same thing here. It's my palm. Good. I hope it's good. I mean, you guys see me making any mistakes, then let me know. Good. It seems like all my geometry is now being controlled by all the joints. Let's go ahead and say show all. And now I should be able to select, and then my entire geometry should pretty much move with it. That is fantastic, isn't it? Let's go ahead and select the joint group and literally hide it because we don't need to see it. You see these IK handles that you have? 1, 2, you've got an IK handle here and an IK handle here. Let's hide those as well. Control H. And go ahead and lock your geometry real quick. And that way, if you're selecting anything, it always has to be geometry. And there you go. That rig has come together pretty fine. You can bend it, you can twist it, you can use the clavicle to rotate up and down. Let's try index, middle, pinky. That works great, isn't it? Don't you guys think? Alright, I'm just going to make sure that I'm going to set this to FK. Alright, that's great. There is, however, one more thing left to do. And before we call it done, we are going to quickly get that done. It's not going to take us too long. Here's what I'm going to be doing. When you look at controllers like that, okay, I see that I can certainly translate it. I can rotate it. But scaling it doesn't really do anything. That's not a desired sort of a thing that I really want from that controller. So I don't want my animator to be able to scale. I also do not want them to be able to mess with the visibility of it. Because if your animator by mistake hides it, he's going to come back to you and then talk about how that controller simply does not exist. So let's keep him from hiding it. And to do that, you're simply going to select the controller, select the attributes that you do not want him to work with. Right click on it and say lock and hide selected. That means the scaling is just simply gone. If it tries to scale it, you see there's this sort of gray locked gizmo that you get to see. Okay, so that's pretty much what I'm going to do next, is to make sure I'm locking and hiding attributes that I don't want my animator to see. Okay, so let's see what else I can do. When I'm looking at 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, those are my central controllers, if you will. Those are only for rotations. You will not be translating any of those. So translations and scale and visibility can go take a hike, so that way you can only rotate them, only rotations. Great. The clavicles are meant for rotation as well and nothing else. So I'm just going to go ahead and lock and hide everything on the clavicles except for the rotations. These are my FK controllers. And because these are my FK controllers, 1, 2, and 3, I'm going to lock and hide everything but the rotations. Now here, You see that there is a set-driven key on the visibility. I want you to know that locking and hiding of attributes does not delete or remove relationships. All that it does is it makes it unavailable for the animator to use, which is all right. So we lock and hide selected. Okay. Let's look at these two too. These two are going to be rotating as well and nothing else. Lock and hide. Now, if you look at the foot can translate and it can rotate. So you want everything but rotations and translations on the foot control. And with this guy, with your K control, you can certainly translate it, but rotating it does nothing. So I'm going to select your pole vector controllers and get rid of everything but translations. Okay, don't forget about your IK controllers here. So let's change your state to 1, and you've got these IK controllers right here. Once again, I'm getting rid of only scale and visibility. And then your elbow controllers will have only translations left. Okay, there are 3 more controllers we have to worry about. Okay, let's look at 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are 2 types of controllers. If you look at the finger controllers, by the way, the finger controllers are only good for the custom attributes. So let's get rid of everything else. Lock and hide. Let's do the same thing for our switches. All I really need is that state attribute over there. Let's get rid of everything else. And you see that hasn't deleted the parent constraint that exists on it. It just makes it unavailable for the animator. Last but not the least, select the root controller. You have a global scale attribute here already, which is controlling our scale values. You don't need any of this. Lock and hide selecting. I'm going to make an incremental save, and that is pretty much the end of our rig. Let's make sure that is sitting in the FK. So you've got FK arms here, and you've got IK legs, which is kind of like a default configuration. And of course, if your animator wants, he can switch the arms back in the IK mode. I'm going to save that file.